Oh, wow. Hey, is anybody on yet? Nice. Nice. Happy to see that we've got some people on. So thank you so much. I am going to try to give people a couple minutes to get on before I start getting into um, the subject matter we're all here today, which is basically what's going on with IBM's decision to change their 401k match to this RBA program. And so just want to say thanks to everybody who's already on, and I'll give you guys just a couple minutes before I jump into it. I want to be respectful of everybody's time too. So I know I'm for a lot of people going to be eating into your lunch hour. So I'm going to try to keep it to 30 minutes. Let me know if you can see that I am sharing a screen or not. I just want to make sure that that functionality is working today. Okay, looks like I'm seeing some thumbs up, so you guys have eyes on the presentation, so that's nice. Thank you, appreciate that. I'm noticing there is a little bit of a time lag. So as you have questions or comments and you throw them in the chat, it might take me probably like a 30-second or so delay before I actually see them. I'm using a new streaming software, so apparently it's not real time. So we've got maybe a 30-minute to 60-second lag in the presentation. All right, we are at 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, so I'm going to go ahead and jump into things. Please just drop a note in the comment section if you've got a question. I am going to open it up towards the end for like a Q&A period of time. But that's going to unfortunately have to be in the chat because this doesn't have the same functionality as like a Zoom would, where I can actually bring somebody on the platform to ask the question via video. So with that said, I am just going to jump right into things. And so please, try to stop me in the comments if you want me to stop and dive deeper into something. So this is all about what you need to know with IBM's retirement plan changes. I wanted to just first start off with a basic disclaimer that any financial advisor would provide in a situation like this. And it's basically just to say that I'm here providing this information in the capacity to educate you. None of this should be looked at as personal financial advice. It shouldn't be considered tax advice in any way, shape, or form. Please just take this in the spirit that it's meant, which is just that it's here to help educate you about what's going on and give you some things to think about when it comes to your own personal financial decisions. That being said, what's our agenda for today? I'm going to talk just like briefly about who I am. Then I'm going to go into what the RBA is, what some of the things are that have stayed the same versus some of the things that have changed, and then what this means for you. And then I'll kind of prod you with some things in terms of risks that you might want to consider as you make decisions about how to approach the new retirement plan. So about me and my firm, we're what's called a fee-only fiduciary, which basically means we don't get any kickbacks. We don't take commissions for selling any products. We simply provide advice to our clients. And the fiduciary part of that is that we have to put our client's best interest first every time, all the time. And if there is a conflict of interest, we have to resolve it in their favor. This is the same standard of duty that a lawyer has for their client, just a different industry. Quality and accessible financial advice. That's what I've built this company around. I think it's really hard to get those two things together if you're not coming from the right place in structuring your firm to be based off of advice instead of selling products. A little bit about me. I was in the Army for 7.5 years, went to University of Florida, got my undergrad in finance, concentrated in finance for my MBA, went to work in corporate America. This is me at Johnson & Johnson. And then I transitioned to IBM. So for some of you that don't know me, which I did see a lot of familiar faces, which made me happy. I was at IBM right before I started this company. So this hits pretty close to home for me. And then also I have a few clients at IBM as well. And then of course I started my own business called Stars and Stripes Financial Advisors. And that's what I'm doing today. So what is the RBA? Generally speaking, this is something that we would call a cash balance defined pension plan. And so you could think of, it in previous times, companies would often have pension plans where they would say, hey, what we're going to focus on is the benefit that you will receive instead of the benefit that we will put into the plan. So 401k is defined contribution. What we're seeing with the RBA is a defined benefit. They've guaranteed, at least for the first few years, what the benefit is going to be. And then they're pegging it to the 10-year treasury rate after a certain point in time. We'll get to that a little bit later, but that's important to understand just from a conceptual standpoint. One huge change is that this is not an optional thing. Everybody is going, well, at least everybody in the United States is going to have to participate in this. It's not something that you can opt out of. And with that in mind, it will affect every single U.S. employee that is part of this plan in some way, shape, or form, because you can't opt out. You don't have that optionality. The 5% is going to be based off of your base pay, performance pay, any kind of overtime or other recurring pay. it will not be based off of any kind of retention pay, sign-on, or relocation bonuses, essentially anything that's not recurring or wouldn't be part of your regular compensation. They're not going to say, oh, well, it's 5% of that as well. And then this point, I really want to drive home that it's tax deferred. The RBA is going to be tax deferred. You do not have the option to say, oh, I'm paying taxes on it in the current year, and therefore I don't have to pay taxes on it when I pull it out in retirement like you would with a Roth account. This will be tax deferred. So just like any of these retirement decisions, you're either going to pay taxes now or you're going to pay them in the future. And this sort of forces you into that I'm paying taxes now bucket, which for some people will be a good thing. For other people, not so much a good thing. Finally, a big change is that unlike the 401k, any credits you have or funds you have in the RBA are not going to be something that you can take a loan out against. So with your 401k account in certain circumstances, you're allowed to borrow from the balance of that money and then pay back into the 401k to satisfy that loan that you made against your retirement funds. That's not an option with the RBA. And generally speaking, that just goes back to the, this is a defined benefit plan, so they don't allow that. And I alluded to this earlier, but this is the earnings schedule for the RBA account. So 2024 to into 2026, they're saying, hey, we're definitely going to give you or credit the account 6%. And then 2027 to 2033, that period of time, they're pegging it to the 10-year treasury rate. So whatever the yield is on the treasury rate, that's what this account is going to get credited with in terms of earnings. But they're going to put a floor under it so it never drops below 3%. So that's actually a pretty attractive thing in terms of, okay, if I'm going to have some of my assets allocated to 10-year treasury securities, it's nice to have that floor, that guarantee there. And then beyond 2034, it's just going to be pegged to the 10-year treasury rate without any minimum floor guarantee. Okay. So what's the same and what's different? On the same side, you can still contribute to your 401k. I think a lot of people got excited. I know I did when I first saw the news about this. I was like, whoa, do we still have a 401k or not? But we will, I say we, but IBM employees will still have a 401k that they can contribute to. The only thing is that IBM is not going to match any of those contributions, and they are taking away that 1% automatic contribution to your 401k. So you still have access to that, and that's important, especially when we're talking about having options in what you invest in, having the ability to choose between traditional Roth and after-tax contributions. Your 401k contribution limits aren't changing. So like the RBA isn't going to steal away your ability to contribute to the 401k plan. You will still have the ability to contribute to the 401k plan despite your RBA involvement. And then the 401k investment options aren't going to change either. There's been no notice that that's changing, which I think is a good thing. And then finally, for those IBMers that have been around for a while and do have access and are participating in some of the older pension plans, such as the prior plan or the PPA/cash benefit plan, nothing about those are changing. So you still have access to those plans, and those plans aren't changing. So I got a question. So we would still have the ability to take out a loan against our existing 401k. Yes, that is my understanding, that you would still have that ability to take out alone against the money that you have in the 401k plan. It's just that the RBA plan, there's no function for you to take it out against the RBA. So just another great reason to keep saving into your 401k plan. So what is changing? There's no 401k matching. I think that's the big headline here. To me, that was a little bit disheartening because there's a lot of data that indicates that people who become millionaires do so in large part due to the fact that they're getting those matching contributions from their employer. That is what it is. Something that's changing is when IBM was making matching contributions, and they still are right now until the end of the year, that money had to be funded on an annual basis. So IBM got to choose when they did that. And up until like last year, they would wait till literally the end of the year, like December 15th, to make those matching contributions and fund that account. They would credit it all year, and then they would put the money in. Well, with the RBA, it's a little bit different. From an accounting standpoint, they're giving you a credit and they're keeping track of the fact that, hey, we've got 5% of this person's salary going in here, but it's notional. They don't have to fund it in any given year. There are some limits that I'll get into in a little bit where they have to keep a trust funded to a certain level. But it's important to understand that from an IBM perspective, this actually helps out with their cash flow because they're not having to fund those matching contributions into the 401k every year. Instead, they're just keeping a tally of, okay, here's what we owe to all these employees. Disability protection plan. I think this flew under the radar a little bit, but for new entrants into IBM that are just getting started, they're not going to have DPP available to them. This is an issue because in the event that somebody should get disabled and can no longer work, part of your compensation is that 401k match, and in the future will be the RBA. And so you can't, through the company, insure against that directly on a going forward basis after this year, if you're new. For those people that are already participating in the DPP, they'll still have access to it, but only on a before tax basis. So if you were making all your contributions in the form of Roth or after tax into that 401k, my understanding is that you won't have access to that DPP anymore. So when you're thinking about open enrollment time and what to do with disability insurance, you may want to consider, as a result of this, increasing your disability insurance to offset the fact that your 401k match disability insurance has gotten either eliminated or curtailed in some way. So that's something to consider as you move forward. Okay, what does this mean for you? If you were maxing the 401k match, your pay will definitely decrease. And that's, I know they're getting rid of the automatic contribution, but let's say you had that automatic contribution, which was 1%, and you're getting a 5% match on top of that. And now with the RBA, they're only doing 5%, and that's absolutely a decrease in what your pay is going to be. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Another thing to keep in mind is because you don't have the ability to get matches for your Roth contributions or your after-tax contributions, it may mean that come retirement time, you have to pay more taxes in retirement. So like if you were making those Roth contributions and you were getting Roth matches, and that means you paid the taxes this year and didn't have to in retirement, well, now you're kind of forced to making fewer of those Roth contributions. So you have to be considering how's my tax picture going to change when it comes time for retirement, and how am I going to offset that decrease in purchasing power because now I've got to pay Uncle Sam a little extra. All right. Another consideration is your asset allocation. And I think this is probably, in my mind, one of the biggest things people should be paying attention to. So if I could stomp on the floor and call your attention to anything, it might just be this. Because it's 5% of your pay that they're diverting to the RBA, and all of the RBA is going to be indexed to the 10-year treasury rate, you're effectively saying that a massive portion of your retirement savings is in fixed income. Now, for people who are closer to retirement and are going to need that money sooner, that might be an okay thing. That might be a healthy part of your asset allocation. For people that are earlier in their career and would have smaller exposure to fixed income or bigger exposure to equities, this may be a very difficult thing to offset because you either need to save more money to make up for the lack of earnings and capital appreciation, or something else, whether it's increasing your savings rate, getting more promotions. It will curtail your ability to be prepared for retirement. Remember to check your beneficiary information with the RBA. They've just decided, hey, we're going to default people into their spouse, followed by their estate being the beneficiaries for this RBA. I think that's an important thing to keep an eye on because not everybody's life is that simple. Sometimes you don't have a spouse. Sometimes you want to leave it to the kids. These are things to consider. And you should always, in general, keep your beneficiaries up to date, something you do once a year. But this one could be problematic. All right. Moving on. Also, this goes back to a previous point about the RBA being funded notionally, basically them crediting your account. They don't have to do it in real time. So this is how the structure works, to my understanding, is IBM has a trust. They have to keep the trust funded to a certain level. Should that trust, and that's according to their legal obligation, should that trust fall below that level for any reason, IBM is on the hook to fund that. Now, in a worst case scenario where, say, IBM's going bankrupt for whatever reason, that's when the PBGC, or Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation, steps in as an insurance provider to try to make up the difference. That said, the PBGC has legal limitations to how much they can make up or how much they can fund those accounts individually. And that's something I would encourage everybody to do, is educate yourself on what those legal limits are. And essentially what it does is they've got like a monthly maximum guarantee, and it goes up as you get older, what that monthly maximum is. But it's something you should keep in mind is in a worst case scenario, you are shouldering some of the risk for this because you would be just a general creditor to IBM should they go bankrupt. And outside of this insurance policy from the PBGC, I don't know what, if anything, you could do in terms of recourse to get a hold of that money. So from a financial advisor perspective, these are kind of the important considerations I would be talking with my clients about, right? So your pay's probably going to decrease if you're already getting that 401k match. So your required savings rate to be ready for retirement should probably change. Asset location. So this is that, okay, how much of my assets are in a traditional 401k versus a Roth versus after tax, or in this case, in the RBA, and how is that treated from a tax standpoint so that I can decrease my lifetime taxes. And so by having 5% of your income be forced into a pre-tax retirement plan, you may want to be considering, okay, well, how do I get more of my money then in the 401k into a Roth or after-tax sort of contribution? Asset allocation, touched on this a little bit, and this is just the fact that in a well-diversified portfolio, some of your money should be in fixed income, but some of it should also be in equities. And that goes for somebody who's in retirement too. That doesn't go away. It's just what percentage do you allocate to fixed income versus equity? And since this is, in this being the RBA, since the RBA is 100% fixed income, it probably means you should look at your 401k or other retirement accounts, IRAs, etc., and perhaps rebalance across those accounts to make up for the fact that this thing is going to be all fixed income. And then finally is that disability coverage thing that I covered earlier. You should probably consider what the ramifications would be if you found yourself in a position where you became disabled, and how are you going to get that extra disability coverage now that you're not getting access to disability coverage for that 401k match. Risks you should understand. This is just the primary risk from my point of view is if you happen to be a younger employee with a longer time horizon, just from an asset allocation standpoint, because fixed income or the 10-year treasury rate historically has not kept up with equities, we would expect there to be a divergence in the ending portfolio balance. So what I did here was I just did a very simple model or assumption to see like what would a hypothetical situation be. And here I had somebody who was, I know it says 30 years old, but I actually changed it to 35, so I apologize for that. But this is somebody who's 35 years old, was saving and getting a match into their 401k plan, had a 70-30 equity fixed income mix, which historically has returned 9.21%. And then I compared that to somebody who didn't change their asset allocation at all, and their 401k kept contributing into that, but then no longer got the match, and the match was then diverted to the RBA. And with the RBA's fixed income position, I just used the historic rate of that 4.5% for the 10-year treasury yield. And you can see here that essentially in a scenario where you do nothing, your ending value for your retirement portfolio ends up being about $1 million less over the course of about 32 years. So that's probably one of the biggest risks that I see. The second big risk just goes back to that bit about you're going to be a general creditor to IBM in the worst case scenario. I currently have no reason to believe that IBM is going out of business, but that is something to be aware of. I see I got a question from Brian. Let's see. So it sounds like the RBA throws off the balance that a target retirement fund creates in a 401k. Absolutely. I have seen nothing in the 401k plan with IBM that indicates that their target retirement accounts somehow is offset by the fact that a bunch of your savings for retirement is now going into the RBA. So effectively, your question's spot on, Brian, which is, can I trust the target retirement accounts anymore to actually handle my asset allocation for me as I approach retirement? And honestly, I think the answer is going to be no. You're going to have to find a target retirement account that somehow is has much more equity exposure than you normally would have to offset the fact that you're getting all this fixed income exposure from the RBA. And now I'm hopeful, because I have seen somebody else bring this up before. I'm hopeful that IBM's listening and is understanding, oh, hey, this really upsets our target retirement options in our 401k. But yeah, it's definitely something you need to look at. So I hope that answers your question, Brian. Thank you. And also good to see you, man. Let's see. The other big risk, and this is more of like an existential type thing, is I have seen a case in the last 10 years that was brought to my attention where a company stopped making matches to their 401k, and within like the next 2 years, they were effectively acquired by another company. And I think that that is something that you should just keep in mind. Like, this is in effect, this is a way for IBM to manage their cash flow a little bit better. And you've got to ask yourself the question, why are they taking such lengths to manage their cash flow like this? And it might be to make themselves more attractive for acquisition, or some other purposes. Maybe they're trying to make another big purchase of another company themselves. Couldn't say for certain, but it's something to keep on top of the mind that probably some more changes are coming down the road. All right, I have talked on for way too long at this point. And much longer than I intended to. Do any of you guys have questions? If so, please pop them in the chat, and I'd be happy to do my best to field them. Also, I'll just leave you guys with this slide as we kind of finish up whatever last questions you have. You can scan the QR code to do like a complimentary consultation with me, no charge. But if you do have any questions now, happy to answer them now. Or if you just want to schedule some time with me for some like one-off stuff, happy to talk to you then as well. All right. Getting a bunch of thank yous. I appreciate it. Thank you all for showing up. All right. Jason asks, will previous year's matches be diverted to the new RBA? So I haven't seen, Jason, I haven't seen anybody say anything about that. As far as I know, they will not do that. And part of my thinking about that is because 401k matches have to happen in the current year. Then as a result, they couldn't really retroactively go back and steal money out of the 401k and put it into the RBA. So I think that it's safe, and I've also never heard of that. So you're probably okay as far as that's concerned. But good question. Thank you, Maureen. Thanks, Greg. I appreciate you too. Keep up the good work. What are implications of pulling out of the RBA before retirement? This is coming from Mitch. So Mitch, the RBA doesn't, or IBM doesn't give you an option to opt out of the RBA. But let's say, for example, you move to another company or you retire. At that point, they have to make those funds available to you. And when they make those funds available to you, you can choose to roll them over to an IRA. Let's say you go to a new company, you could also roll them over into your new company's 401k. You also, according to IBM, they're going to make some sort of annuity plan available to you. I'm not a big fan of annuities myself, but those are kind of your three options. But you don't have an opportunity, excuse me, you don't have an opportunity before you leave the company to do that. So I hope that helps answer that question. All right, let's see. Emily says, if you leave IBM and roll over your RBA funds into a Roth 401k and the amount is more than the max contribution limit for the year, are there any penalties? So you said something in that question, Emily, that's really interesting. And it's basically from RBA to Roth 401k. And you really need to understand that because the RBA is pre-tax and Roth 401k is after tax, should you make that transfer, all the money coming out of the RBA into the 401k is going to be counted as ordinary income in the year that you make that transfer. So that would be a gigantic taxable event. I would probably say, depending on what's going on in your life, like if it's a low income year, maybe that's a good idea. If it's a high income year, you're probably going to get hammered with taxes and you might want to think about alternatives there. But in terms of penalties and max contributions, when you transfer from one retirement plan to another, there's not a maximum amount that you can transfer. You could transfer $1 million from one retirement account to another, no issue. So there's not like some max there. And then in terms of penalties, the only penalty that you might run into is kind of the tax penalty if you don't do from like pre-tax to pre-tax. So like RBA to traditional IRA, there should be no penalties. RBA to Roth IRA, they're going to tax you. Or if you go RBA to just your checking account and you haven't hit traditional retirement age or the retirement age that's appropriate for you, there's definitely going to be penalties and taxes. So those are definitely some things that you want to keep in mind. Hopefully that helps. Brian says or asks, have you seen other companies make the same change? There are other companies that have made almost identical changes to this in the past. It's not a novel concept. It's just not something I've seen often with big, like Fortune 500 or Fortune 100 companies. It's kind of a smaller use case. You don't see it too often. But it is out there. So it's not totally unfounded. Rich, thanks for showing up to the presentation. Good to see you, man. Robin, you're welcome. Chris, happy belated Veterans Day to you too. All right. Can you speak to it being vested after 12 months and the possibility that employees, for lack of a better phrase, don't last until 2025? As I understand it, the RBA, you have to work at IBM for a full year or have a full year of service already to get access to the RBA. Once you start getting your account credited to the RBA, my understanding is that it's vested immediately, 100% vested immediately. So everybody with at least 12 months of tenure should be getting that amount credited into their account immediately along with their paycheck. And IBM doesn't have a reason to delay that because they're not actually funding it with real dollars in real time anyways. So I can't imagine why they wouldn't do that. On the bright side though, like if should something happen, you're not working at IBM in 2025, now you have an opportunity to transfer those funds into a 401k, an IRA, and have kind of regain that control of how you invest those assets. So, should that unfortunate situation come about, there's a little bit of a silver lining there. Thank you, Jason. Thanks, Mitch. Appreciate it, Emily. All right. Well, I'll give it like one more minute and then I'll sign off. But thank you guys so much for spending the time with me today. Thank you for the great questions and the engagement. I really appreciate it. And I hope that this helps. And please don't hesitate to reach out, if I can be of further service. Have a great afternoon, and I wish you all the best of luck. Hey, great to see you too, Jessica. I am going to see about whether or not I can share these slides out. I do want to try to make them available, and I'll even try to include some backup slides that have the PBGC maximum monthly allowance, basically that insurance on the account. But to be honest, I'm not sure if LinkedIn's going to give me a full list of everybody that attended this, so I can send it out. But I will write your name down, Jessica, and make sure that you get a copy. Eric, thanks, man. Take care, brother. Good to see you on here. All right. All right, I sign off. Take care. Have a good day, everybody.